Welcome to the program. Thank you for your time as always. This is Focus on Africa. I'm Wahiga Mwaura. Now, it's day 21 of the US-Israel war with Iran. 3 weeks in, this conflict is sending shockwaves thousands of miles away, with oil prices soaring and the cost of basic commodities rising across vulnerable nations. Energy facilities have been hit in tit-for-tat strikes, disrupting oil and fertilizer shipments and driving global prices higher. European powers and Japan have pledged to help stabilize markets and ensure safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. But with no end in sight, fears of a global oil shock are mounting. Developing countries still recovering from the COVID pandemic and the Ukraine war now face renewed economic strain. Ethiopia has ordered fuel suppliers to prioritize security institutions. In Zimbabwe, petrol prices have jumped nearly 40% since January. Egypt's energy import bill has more than doubled. Now, the ripple effect is being felt by households across the continent. For example, in Somalia, some families say that they are struggling to put food on the table as costs rise.
I'm a motorbike driver. As you can see, fuel prices have skyrocketed due to the war in Iran. A few weeks ago, prices were low and stable, but now we're in trouble.
After the American war on Iran, fuel prices went up. People's purchasing power seems to have declined. We feel that the market is not good. However, we place our trust in Allah.
Now, some Africans who had been working in Iran have been forced to flee, leaving their jobs and way of life behind in search of safety. Hussein Hassan is a Kenyan journalist who's been working in Tehran but has now been left with no choice but to leave. He tells us about the mental toll the war has taken on him.
It was so close. Everything was shaky. It was like some sort of earthquake because there are fighter jets hovering over our heads. Then a few seconds later, we started hearing explosions all over. So everyone was confused because it was so abrupt. Up until this point, I feel, so much confused. I don't know. I keep doubting myself if I'm speaking the right thing. I think I need some psychological check or something, because ever since that time, I've been having this second guessing myself. I have these fears, maybe some, even when you hear some, just even a tire burst, you think it's another missile landing or some explosion or something.
Indeed, as this war intensifies, governments across the African continent are watching the unfolding crisis with growing unease. Earlier, I spoke to Professor Geoffrey Mabea Aori, who's the CEO of the Regional Association of Energy Regulators for Eastern and Southern Africa under COMESA. I started by asking him for an assessment of the energy security situation on the continent at the moment. This is what he told me.
As we speak now, the disruptions has affected most of the countries in Africa as we speak. And we are seeing a number of countries going through various supply shocks and prices going up in various countries, starting from a percentage of around 10% to as high as 25% across many countries in Africa. And so the energy security in total, what I can say is that there is a lot of shaky and a little bit of panic in some of the countries whereby there is no sufficient stockpiles in their countries, and especially now that we're not sure how far this war is about to go.
How bad might it get if the conflict continues?
If it prolongs, it is going to actually impact a whole spectrum of sectors in the continent, right from the transport to the food industry and several others. And actually, we are seeing some of the countries right now, vehicles queuing. That tells you that even the little strategic stocks that were there are already being depleted, and the demand is really moving high, and that's why the prices are also moving quite high as we speak.
In many African countries, taxes are a big proportion of the cost of fuel at the pump. Is it time for African governments to relook at this?
Definitely, yes. It's very important. In fact, this is the right time. It's an opportune moment for the African continent to rethink and re-strategize on how they are going to adopt and also come up with the new strategies for the energy security in the continent. This is the right time. They need to look at the existing, refineries, existing strategic reserves that we have, and how we can be able to exploit them. But also on the element of the tax and the issues of subsidies. In fact, this is one of the key things where government has to decide whether to basically make a pass-through cost or maybe introduce the subsidy that will be able to, to cushion on some of the issues. But it's a gray area because you really have to balance, because even as we look at the, what is currently going on, even those countries that have got these subsidies are being depleted as we speak.
Already there's very little wiggle room for the average African consumer. We've seen protests across various African countries over the last 3 years because of the cost of living. I mean, is there any further room, to tax consumers, or is there any further room to raise these prices when African nationals are saying that the cost of living already on the continent is quite high?
In the short term, we don't see any reverse of these prices. But in the medium term, we are likely to see the impact again after the war has stopped and the opening of the strait is realized. We are likely to see that. Now, what the impact will be in most of the countries is that the increase will be gradual and it will impact in most of the product. But again, the element of subsidy at this point will be critical.